Welcome to Complete BS, the official podcast of couch coaches everywhere. Not just football. It's every sport that ruins your parlay, wrecks your fantasy week, and still brings you back for more. Buzzer beaters, blown leads, and brackets in flames. Yeah, we're all over it. Unfiltered takes, armchair analysis, and enough bold opinions to fill a playbook. Hosted by Brian Schmuck, sports junkie, the Saban of stats, and your official voice of I could coach better than that. Let's go.
Couch Coach Nation, week 2 is in the books, and we had 4 top 25 teams go down. Number 12, Arizona State. Number 13, Florida. Number 17, SMU. All lost to unranked teams. And then, of course, Michigan at number 15, they lost to number 18, Oklahoma. USF, the Bulls from Tampa, they're now 2-0 with wins over 2 ranked teams, and they're looking ahead now this week to a ranked matchup against Miami. Purdue, the Boilermakers, moved to 2-0 with a win over Southern Illinois, and Barry Odom is now the first-year coach for Purdue to start 2-0 since Cleo O'Donnell. AV, give me your thoughts opening here week 2.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of marquee matchups, top 25, top 10 matchups or anything, but college football always delivers some really good games, some upsets. Watched a lot of football this weekend, man, and it was all good. Week 2 to me is what teams are starting to reveal themselves, either good or bad. Oklahoma looked really good. Florida looked really bad. Clemson followed up kind of a poor performance with uninspiring performance. When you start stacking weeks on top of each other, you start to see some trends. And so there's a lot to take away, even from these games that aren't huge matchups.
Absolutely. The games that we covered on Friday, we'll start with the marquee matchup, Oklahoma-Michigan. To me, it was kind of the 3 games that we talked about, the least interesting to watch. Last week, our star players, John Mateer and Justice Haynes, they both delivered. Mateer had 270 yards passing and a touchdown, 74 yards on the ground on 19 carries. He was running the ball, 2 touchdowns. Justice Haynes, 19 carries also, 125 yards and a touchdown, but he didn't get any help from anybody else. Bryce Underwood only completed 9 of 24 passes. He was kind of irrelevant in the game. Michigan struggled all day. Oklahoma, they jumped out to an early lead, up 14-0. Dominic Zavada, the Michigan kicker, he's usually automatic, and he missed a field goal there in the first half that could have given them a little bit of momentum. Oklahoma defense, they controlled the game. It didn't feel to me that this game was as close as even the 11 points. I felt like Oklahoma controlled it all the way, and it felt more like a 21-point game than 11 points. Kind of like varsity versus JV. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it played out very similar to what I thought it might. I thought Mateer would be the difference. He's a dynamic quarterback. Bryce Underwood, seeing the moment might have been a little big for him, but to be honest, I heard I think it was Booger McFarland, I heard one of the studio guys say this at halftime. You bring in a quarterback like Bryce Underwood, the expectation is you're going to let him play quarterback and you're going to let him throw the ball and push the ball down the field. And it seems like there's still a run-heavy offense. They don't push the ball very much. Maybe that's because Underwood's not quite ready, but it's probably because that's who Sherrone Moore is. And I don't know, if you can't run the ball down the other team's throat and you get behind, it becomes a problem for you. I think Michigan seemed to lack, outside of Justice Hayes, like you said, seemed to lack playmakers on the outside, and they just couldn't get anything going offensively, and Oklahoma got a couple of scores, and then they just leaned on them the rest of the game. And like you said, once they got up a couple of scores, it just felt over. We should probably have a segment called I Have Questions, because last week I talked about I have questions about Garrett Riley, right, and Clemson's offense, which went unanswered this week. But I have questions about Sherrone Moore as the head coach at Michigan. It's a long season. We'll see how the rest of it goes. But that offense was uninspiring. Hats off to Oklahoma. That's a big win. You've mentioned this a couple of times, that they have a tough schedule. The back half of the schedule gets really tough, and this was like a really important game for them. And they took care of business. And the odds-on favorite for the Heisman right now is John Mateer, per Vegas, not per me. But I could see it, though. If they win a bunch of these games in the back half of the season and he's putting up 270 to 300 yards, he's going to put his name in the mix for sure.
If they win 10 games, it's because of Mateer, and he's in New York, I think. He did have high praise for Bryce Underwood. Mateer is a 6th-year senior, and he said Underwood is going to be good. He's much better now as a freshman, 2 games into his career, than I was. Mateer talking. So high praise from the veteran quarterback, Heisman hopeful, about Bryce Underwood and what his future looks like. As far as the questions about Sherrone Moore, you're not going to get any answers in the next 2 weeks because he's sitting at home the next 2 weeks. He's not allowed to have anything to do with their practices or anything going on. Like, he can't attend practice and can't be at the games. Obviously, he'll get the film and there'll be all kinds of conversations, but just watch out for those text messages, Sherrone. So let's move on to Iowa State and Iowa. When you look at the stats at this game, it was so close. These games are always close. There was 24 yards that separated the two teams. Each had one turnover. Time of possession was only 1 minute and 8 seconds between the two, and the score reflected it. Second quarter, Iowa State opened up a 13-3 lead, and Iowa, the way they had been playing, the way they looked, I thought they might be done. And then they went on a 16-play, 85-yard drive to cut the lead to 13-10. Iowa State actually had them stopped on third down, but penalties gave them a new set of downs, and then they score on the very next play. Iowa had another 16-play drive in the third quarter that went over 9 minutes. There was only 2 possessions in the third quarter because of how long these drives were going. But it set up another close Cy-Hawk Trophy game. Iowa State got the win on a 54-yard field goal. Mark Gronowski that came in, I thought he was going to be a little change of identity for Iowa. He's coming in with all of these stats from FCS, threw for over 10,000 yards at South Dakota State. Newsflash, FBS is not the FCS. And Mark Gronowski, he's not a good quarterback right now. They're not going to win games if they can't throw for over 100 yards. Iowa's got some issues, and they did not look good, even though this game was really close.
Speaking of having questions, I have questions on Iowa's quarterback play. Like you said, Mark Gronowski, 83 yards. You're not winning games like that. Not real games, not PSYOP trophies. I think the quarterback play was the difference in the game. Rocco Becht was just a little better. He marched him down and got a few more points. And Gronowski looked nimble and like he can run. Only 12 completions and only 83 yards. You're not winning games like that. I don't know that Iowa's defense is what it was a few years ago where it was just smothering. They're more bend but don't break, and they didn't give up a ton of points, and it's hard to put this game on the defense. They're not that same Iowa smothering defense that they were a couple of years ago that could win you games by themselves, at least not early on. I don't mind a low-scoring defensive game. I'm old school. Like, that leads to some drama at the end of the game, and this was tight, and it wasn't terrible to watch in terms of keeping you interested in the outcome, but just no offense from Iowa. There's no threat of offense from Iowa. Even a 16-play drive. You're talking 3 yards of play. You know what I mean? I'm not convinced they're going to have a great season this year. And
No, I think Iowa right now, they don't have a really difficult schedule, which I thought, okay, if you win this game, you might be set up to win a bunch of games and you might get to that 9 or 10 win mark. And this is going to be your recipe. What do you get out of the quarterback? To me, you've answered that now through 2 games with 83 yards and 44 yards passing. You're not getting anything out of the quarterback. The defense is good. They're going to keep you around, but they can't score points. And so now I'm feeling this is more of a 5 or 6 loss team. Iowa State, they're a really tough, gritty team. Beck's going to have them in games. They've got an excellent kicker. The defense stepped up on that last drive when they needed to with back-to-back sacks. So I think Iowa State, now I've seen them 3 games. They're a tough team. They're a gritty team. I think there's somebody that you don't want to face, but they're not making anybody afraid of them at all.
Think about this. I think one of the worst teams I've watched this year is Kansas State. And Kansas State made a game of it with Iowa State. You know, it wasn't like Iowa State looked good against even that team. I don't know. I think the jury's still out. They're 3-0, so they've got that going for them. But we'll see how the rest of the season plays out. I see a few losses in their schedule, though. Maybe multiple.
Absolutely. Down in Durham, Duke hosted Illinois and lost 45-19. At the half, each team had 1 turnover, and this was a 1-point game. Illinois was up 14-13. We had a ball game.
Yep.
Then the second half happened. And Duke went fumble, touchdown, interception, fumble, turnover on downs. Illinois converted on those opportunities, scoring 31 second half points. I was looking at the stat sheet, and I know it said Duke had 5 turnovers. As I was looking through it, I only found 4, but it said they had 1 interception and 4 fumbles. I'm missing one somewhere. Luke Altmeyer, he played well. He threw for just shy of 300 yards, 296 yards, 3 touchdowns. This was all Illinois in the second half because of Duke's mistakes, but Illinois converted on those opportunities, and you got to give them credit for that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Illinois, they're a good team. I'm a little surprised at how good they are. I know at one point, 3 of the turnovers were in the red zone. So you had a muff punt that gave Illinois points because it was right around the 10-yard line. Another one, you were driving towards the end zone and you fumbled. Mensa's interception was thrown inside like the 10-yard line. So all of those are not just turnovers where you lose possession, but potential points you're going to score versus points you're giving away. And it just flipped the game. To give Illinois credit, though, the fourth quarter, they just controlled the game. Duke couldn't get stops. Altmeyer is a way better quarterback than I thought he would be. He really has command of that offense. I wasn't thrilled with the way they used Mensa. They roll him out a lot, and I'm not a coach or anything, but it felt like a lot of times he was working with half the field and it was crowded, and they just kept doing that over and over, and it didn't seem to be working. And that interception he threw came on a play like that where he was rolling out and tried to fit it on the sidelines, and it got picked. So I wasn't a fan of that, but he threw for a lot of yards. They moved the ball quite well. If they didn't turn the ball over, it could have been a different game. I don't want to completely take it away from Illinois, though, based on turnovers, because they controlled the fourth quarter, and I feel like they were the better team watching it, even though there were some bad turnovers from Duke.
Illinois is a team of continuity. They're the only team in the country that returns their head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and quarterback, all 4 spots for 3 straight seasons. With the transfer portal, NIL, coaches moving here and there and getting other jobs, to have all 4 of those positions together for 3 years, Altmeyer knows what these coaches want. The defense, there's continuity there. It's a senior laden team. Illinois is going to be around in this conversation for the playoff hunt all the way through the season. They're a really good team. I enjoy watching them. Illinois is here to stay this year. Lee's Book Club recovered this week, posted a 3-2 record. Any thoughts there on the book club? You had a big win with Syracuse covering the 6.5 because of overtime.
Yeah, I got lucky with Syracuse, a little unlucky with the 2 losses. Like I said, Duke had 5 turnovers. You're not going to cover like that. I would have liked to see what would happen without those. SMU was favored by 3. They were up 7 with a minute left and couldn't hold Baylor out of the end zone. Then they got the ball back with a few seconds left and had a chance to kick a field goal that would have at least pushed the game. He missed it. In overtime, they traded touchdowns. In the second overtime, he missed another field goal, and from there it was over. I probably underestimated how bad SMU's defense is, like really bad.
Their defense is horrible, and it starts up front with their defensive line. They may as well not have 4 guys on that D-line because they're bad. Anybody can push them.
And the scheme
around.
was bad, too, because on the last drive, I guess they were playing prevent, but they were rushing 3 guys. Like you said, their defensive line isn't a strength anyway. You take one of them away, he was just sitting back there for 5-10 seconds. And so they marched down the field and scores. Not bad overall, though. 3 wins, 2 losses. We'll take the winning record. The 2 beats weren't terrible picks like my UCLA one was last week. So we'll roll with it, keep stacking some wins.
Game balls this week, right there at Baylor SMU game. Sawyer Robertson, the Baylor quarterback, 34 of 50 for 440 yards, 4 touchdowns to lead his unranked Baylor Bears to the upset over SMU. He gets a game ball. And down in Tallahassee, Deuce Robinson, I'm going to call him Primetime 3. His dad wanted to be Primetime 2. So we've got Deuce, 5 receptions, 173 yards, 2 touchdowns. 82 and 42 yards were those touchdown catches, both in the first quarter. Game was over. Deuce got out of the game pretty early. Otherwise, he could have gone for 250, 300 yards the way he was going. So we got 2 game balls there, Sawyer Robertson and Deuce Robinson.
Let's give an honorary game ball to Coach Jeff Lebby for the Mississippi State Bulldogs pulling off the upset against Arizona State. 2-win team last year. Gets their first real test of the season at home this year against a top 12. I think they were ranked 12, Arizona State, who went to the playoffs last year. Not only did they win, they did it in a gutty kind of performance. They jumped out to a lead. Everything was crumbling in the second half, and they didn't give up. They stood up and scored late. And congratulations to Jeff Lebby.
All right. Friday, we'll be back with 4 games that we're going to talk about. Our lead game kind of let us down a little bit because thanks to the Florida Gators losing, but we've got Florida at LSU, and we'll have LSU All-American Todd McClure joining us. We're also going to talk those USF Bowls at Miami, Georgia at Tennessee, and Texas A&M at Notre Dame. So we'll get 4 games previewed for you next week. There's probably 3 or 4 other games that I could have thrown in here. There's a lot of really good games to look at next week that we could have put on this list. So big weekend of football. And then when you look at the complete BS top 25, it's posted on X. I post it every Saturday night late, but it's definitely out early Sunday morning. I do have one correction that I made a mistake on with USF and Florida, and I flipped them around when I posted it on Twitter. It's corrected here. So I've got number 25, Indiana, 24, Florida, 23 is BYU, 22, the USF Bulls, 21, Arizona State, 20, Alabama, 19, Utah, 18, Nebraska, number 17 is Tennessee, 16, Ole Miss, 15, Texas Tech, 14, Notre Dame, 13 is Iowa State, Illinois is at 12, South Carolina 11, moving into the top 10, Clemson's at 10, Texas 9, Oklahoma at 8, Florida State's 7, Georgia is number 6, LSU 5, Penn State is 4. I moved them down this week a little bit, just didn't really play that well. Miami's at 3. Probably one of the most impressive offenses so far this year. Oregon, number 2, and sitting at number 1 still is the defending national champion Ohio State Buckeyes.
Sounds good, man. I'm really looking forward to Georgia, Tennessee. That'll be an interesting matchup to me, more so because I don't know what to make of Georgia yet. But we'll talk about all of those on the next episode. Yeah. So that's a game that kind of sticks out to me just because I want to see what Georgia looks like.
Absolutely. I've got some thoughts on Tennessee and maybe need to eat a little bit of crow for what my thoughts on Tennessee and what they were going to be this season versus what they're showing early on. But make sure to like, share, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on X and Instagram, and we'll see you on Friday, Couch Coach Nation.
Thanks for listening to Complete BS. Be sure to subscribe, share, and follow us online. And tell us what you think of this episode. Use hashtag CouchCoachNation. And let's keep the conversation going.